What in the nine hells is Wizards of the Coast thinking? They have gone and lost their freaking minds, and what they're doing, I assure you, dear fellow gamer, that it is harmful to you as well as me. Now, a lot of you have probably already heard a lot of the drama that's going on around 1D&D and the new OGL, but for those of you that haven't, Wizards has been working on a new version of Dungeons & Dragons called 1D&D, and along with that, they've been working on a new gaming license called OGL 1.1 that binds third-party publishers, such as me, into some really heinous crap. On January 5th, a draft of this 9,000-word license was leaked to the press, and the excerpts that we've seen are bad, with a capital B. I'm not usually one to get wrapped up in industry drama or run around yelling that the sky is falling, but something like this, what we've seen from this draft document, is very concerning, and if it's released in its current form, it would have a direct impact on how I make a significant chunk of my living. And it'll also affect you. Now, I've got some skin in the game and it's feeling a bit pinched, and honestly, so should yours. But okay, you may be thinking, Steve is upset about this and Wizards is doing something that could affect his living, but really, why should I care? And what the hell is an OGL anyways? All of those are fair questions, hypothetical viewer. A bit of background for those of you who don't know what the OGL is. Feel free to skip this if you do. But the Open Gaming License, or OGL, is a document that lets publishers use D&D content from Wizards of the Coast in their own creations. That content comes from a very specific place called the System Reference Document. This is a big, long document containing stuff like the basic rules, base classes, backgrounds, items, spells, and whatnot. And as long as you include the OGL in your publication and abide by its rules, you can copy and paste information from the SRD into your publication without having to worry about Wizards of the Coast's lawyers breathing down your neck. It's a fantastic thing. And since the license was first released in the year 2000, the OGL has enabled thousands of publishers, big and small, to create supplements that surround D&D and bolster the gaming community. It even enabled the creation of the first version of Pathfinder. Without the OGL, the second largest tabletop role-playing game wouldn't even exist, and neither would a lot of other publishing companies and third-party products. And that's probably the crux of the issue. The text of the new draft OGL seems to indicate that Wizards is keenly interested in either destroying the competition or taking a cut of their profits. Under the new OGL, all publishers who make use of the license would have to register with Wizards and upload copies of their creations, and then they sign the rights to their publications away, because the new OGL gives Wizards a, quote, non-exclusive, perpetual, irrevocable, worldwide, sub-licensable, royalty-free license to use that content for any purpose, end quote. That's right. If a publisher so much as includes a stat block of a bandit captain or makes mention of magic missile, Wizards of the Coast can take their entire product and publish and profit off of that creation. They can steal from publishers whenever they want, put it in a book, and profit off of it, while that publisher is left with nothing. And why shouldn't they be able to do that, some of you might be asking? Well, because of precedent, that's why. The original OGL is 23 years old. There are people publishing under that license who weren't even born when it came out. For the past 23 years, Wizards of the Coast has allowed independent creators and publishers to bolster and support Dungeons & Dragons at no cost to Wizards. Now, to allow something like that to go on for 23 years, intentionally, mind you, and then do a complete 180 and be like, nah, is a real dick move. Now, I'm using the word publisher here intentionally because it brings to mind a faceless company that puts out a product, but the reality isn't so anonymous. Most independent publishers for D&D are just individuals who love the hobby. It's your brother, or your sister, or your cousin. It's the guy you work with who decorates his office with toys. It's some dude on YouTube who decided to turn his passion for RPGs into a small business and now relies on it to support his family. It's real people with real things to lose, all because executives over at Hasbro and Wizards of the Coast think that D&D is under-monetized. Yes, that is a word that they actually used. So not only do we have to register, upload, and sign away our rights as creators and publishers, but under this new OGL, we would also have to provide financial reports to Wizards. That's a whole new level of bookkeeping that people doing this as a hobby aren't ready for. And I'm willing to bet you that more than a few creators are going to see that requirement and either stop creating content for D&D or stop creating content altogether, which is a really bad thing. It's a shame to lose that kind of creativity in this industry or any. Now, realistically, is Wizards going to gobble up all the small-time publishers' content and spit out a book that only they profit from? No, probably not. But they will probably take little tiny things here and there that they like better than what they created. Will I look in an official D&D book one day and see an adventure that looks startlingly familiar to one that I published? It would be possible under this new license, and there would be no legal recourse whatsoever. All right, I want to pause this topic here for just a second to tell you about something that's really important. It's not actually important. It's just something I want to give you guys because I like to give you guys stuff. If you want a nice custom character sheet that I had commissioned a couple of months ago, head on over to our Patreon. You can get this custom character sheet and all of our other creations for as little as $1. Now, if you don't want to do that, that's totally cool, but this might actually be your last chance to get this character sheet here because with the new OGL shenanigans, who knows if I can keep offering this sort of thing without paying the blood tax to Wizards of the Coast. And if you don't want to become one of our patrons, that's totally fine, but at the very least, click the subscribe button right down here. I would be forever grateful of that, and if you could like the video, maybe share it too, do all that social media nonsense stuff, that'd be fantastic. But if you don't want to do that too, fine. Just enjoy the rest of this video and all the doomsaying that comes along with it. Now, this new license agreement probably isn't going to hurt the biggest creators. Businesses like Paizo and Cobalt Press and MCDM and Critical Role, they can either move their content away from the OGL entirely or lawyer up or probably negotiate for custom contracts that are a lot more beneficial than what the rest of us are going to get. The rest of us small fish, however, we're left behind to get gobbled up by the big dragon in the room. And you know what dragons like? Treasure. I mentioned financial reports just a little bit ago. In the new OGL, anyone publishing under that license will have to report their earnings to Wizards through their online platform, presumably D&D Beyond. Wizards breaks these publishers into 3 tiers based on the gross earnings they make through the OGL. There are those that make less than $50,000 a year, those that make between $50,000 and $750,000 a year, and then there are those that make more than $750,000 a year. Right now, the OGL says that publishers making over $750,000 a year would have to pay a 20 to 25% royalty on any money made beyond that $750,000. And some of you may be thinking, yeah, that's fine, whatever. They're making bank, so they can pay. But it's not just large publishers that are subject to that. I myself have a Kickstarter in the works for a book of adventures called Libris Nocturnum. This is 13 horror adventures that range from level 0 to level 12, which you should absolutely check out in the link down below. I'd tell you more about it, but that's not really what this video is about. The release of this OGL 1.1 draft is really concerning for me because I'm faced with a choice. Either I have to go through my entire book and remove and replace any OGL content, which is a lot of work, or I have to face the possibility that I might have to pay a really steep royalty if this Kickstarter does well, which I hope it will. But putting aside the topic of high-grossing publishers paying royalties, the only reason I can see for making everyone report their earnings to Wizards is that so that they can get an idea of how much money is coming in through the OGL. And then they can take their cut of that too, if they see fit. If that sounds alarmist to you, then you should know that it's entirely possible. There's a provision in the new OGL that lets Wizards update it for any reason, so long as they give 30 days notice. So with 30 days notice, Wizards can decide that they want a cut of the money from everybody making $50,000 or more, or from everybody, irrespective of their earnings. With 30 days notice, they can do whatever they want, and there's not a damn thing we can do about it. Royalties like this could make publishers less likely to create content that's compatible with D&D, so there could potentially be fewer products on the market in the future. But what's most likely to happen here is the same thing that happens elsewhere whenever manufacturing prices go up. Those costs get passed on to you, dear consumer, in the form of higher prices. For example, with my Kickstarter, do I set the price like I wanted to before January 5th? Or do I increase it to make up for the potential 20% royalty that I'm going to have to pay on earnings over $750K if things go really well? I don't know. So not only will publishers all across the spectrum be affected by this new OGL, either by royalties or added bookkeeping and due diligence that they have to do for Wizards, but so will you when you purchase any third-party material that's released under it. Well, why not, you ask, just publish content under the previous OGL license and ignore the new one? That is another great question, hypothetical viewer. You are on fire. The answer to that is because Wizards is attempting to deauthorize the old OGL license that everybody's been publishing under for 23 years. Whether they can do this is up for legal debate, and there's arguments on both sides. People with degrees far more expensive than my own are arguing about it right now. This is something that's going to take litigation to figure out, and believe me, litigation will happen unless Wizards does some serious damage control and backpedaling. Small-time publishers and creators are being treated like an enemy, but they're not the enemy, and they never have been. We are what has helped grow a vibrant community around this game that we all love. We make new adventures, we make new character classes, we make new items. Imagine if Skyrim didn't have a modding community, or if Bethesda suddenly claimed ownership of all the mods that anyone ever created. Do you think Skyrim would still be played and talked about today, 12 years later? Probably not, and that's what appears to be on the horizon for D&D if this new OGL is published in its current state. So what can you do about it? You can make your voice heard. You can advocate for a true open gaming license, one that doesn't treat creators like enemies, one that doesn't allow Wizards of the Coast to steal our creations whenever they want. The current round of 1D&D feedback surveys are live right now, and they are slated to stay up till around January 20th, I think. There's a link to the survey down in the description of this video. If that link goes dead before January 20th, they probably decided to pull it because they're getting way too many activist responses in there. But as long as it's still active, go there. Fill out the survey any way you like, and then let them know what you think about the OGL 1.1 license and what it will do to publishers. Be polite, don't curse, don't threaten, but let them know that this new OGL will damage the independent publishing industry that surrounds D&D. It will harm D&D by extension and Wizards of the Coast itself. And maybe let them know that there's a lot of other games out there nowadays. You know, D&D isn't the only D20 game in town after all, and it'd be a real shame if people began to switch away en masse. Now, I've heard some really good things about Pathfinder 2e. Maybe we ought to give it a try.